I'd like to give everyone the protection they deserve.
Can I ask you that question? What is the benefit that the National Assembly is benefiting from?
Nigeria, which gained independence in 1960, is a country of 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. It has 3 tiers of government, which are the federal, state, and local governments. The federal government is composed of 3 distinct branches: the legislative, executive, and judiciary, whose powers are derived from the Constitution of Nigeria in the National Assembly, the President, and the federal courts, including the Supreme Court. Nigeria's constitution provides for a bicameral National Assembly, which consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate.
Let us look at the law when we come back.
Each state elects members to the House of Representatives for 4-year terms. 3 members from each state for the Senate and 1 from the Federal Capital Territory are also elected for 4-year terms.
The legislative arm, talking about Nigeria, have powers given to it under the Constitution. The fact that the Constitution must be obeyed is contained at Section 1 of the Constitution. That is the most supreme law in the country. It is called Grant Norm. Then Section 4 talks about the power of the legislative arm of government. Then the general powers of the legislative arm of government starts from Section 49 to Section 89 of the Constitution.
What is expected of the National Assembly in terms of those sections is that when Parliament forms an opinion by way of resolution published in the official gazette, that there are deficits or deficiencies in laws that they have enacted or in respect of matters within its legislative power, or that there are issues relating to how the laws they have enacted have been implemented by the executive. Parliament has the right to cause an investigation under the Constitution to be carried out through various committees of the National Assembly as established under the standing rules or standing orders of the Senate and the House of Representatives respectively.
I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The history of the Nigerian legislature dates back to the Lagos Legislative Council of 1862, established under British colonial rule. Decades later, major changes were introduced to the legislative structure through the 1922 Constitution, when the Lagos Legislative Council was abolished and the National Legislative Body was established with 46 members, 4 of whom were elected. A 1946 Constitution introduced further reforms to the legislature. A key reform under this Constitution created the foundation for the country's current federal system by establishing 3 regional legislative bodies: the Eastern House of Assembly, headquartered in Enugu; the Western House of Assembly, seated in Ibadan; and the Northern Regional Council, with Kaduna as its headquarters. The 1951 Constitution accorded the regional legislature lawmaking powers on various regional issues enumerated in the Constitution. The federal arrangement was further enhanced through the 1954 Constitution, which, among other things, clearly defined the legislative competences of the federal and regional legislature. More reforms were made in the years that followed. For instance, in 1959, the Nigerian Senate was established, and the Nigerian Federal Legislature, which until then had been a unicameral body, became bicameral. At independence in 1960, Nigeria adopted a parliamentary system of government, mirroring that of its former colonizer, the United Kingdom. In 1979, Nigeria abolished the parliamentary system of government in favor of the presidential system of government, largely for the purpose of achieving a sharper separation of power between the legislative and executive branches. Although Nigeria was a dictatorship from 1983 through 1998, the presidential system of government was reinstituted in 1999 when Nigeria returned to democratic rule. The Senate is the upper chamber of the National Assembly, and it consists of 109 senators. The lower chamber of the Legislature is the House of Representatives. It consists of 360 representatives elected for a 4-year term. The primary function of this arm of government is lawmaking. They are backed by the Constitution and are independent in the sphere of establishing the legal principles of state and public life.
In 1999, the first National Assembly, remember during Obasanjo's time, there was an attempt to even impeach Obasanjo, but it survived, and there were wide allegations that some members were compromised. It shows the power of the legislative arms, and it shows us so that they have oversight functions.
The House have decided that this is a committee affair and not a personalized affair.
The oversight function of these lawmakers means ensuring the implementation of laws and ensuring that legislation and government policies are implemented effectively.
The power oversight is anchored more under Section 88, 89. And that is in an effort to eliminate corruption, inefficiency, and block wastages. Look at Section 4. The function of the parliament is what? Is to make laws. Okay, when you make laws, it's also a duty to ensure that those laws work, that they are obeyed. That's why essentially this is our job.
Oversight functions means checking the excesses of the executive, checking whether laws passed are being implemented, trying to find out whether there are lacunas, where certain faults can be found in the law so that they can make amendment. Then they find out whether money appropriated are being used as appropriated. So they can go into investigation. Section 88 gives them that power to investigate whether funds are being properly utilized. Fund from the general purse, which is the Revenue Mobilization Fund, that is where all the funds are supposed to be. And then if budget are approved and appropriation act is passed, whether they are complied with. And then in the executive, who is the person that has the power to ensure that funds appropriated are used as appropriated, is the Auditor General. And the Auditor General's appointment and security of his office is guaranteed in the Constitution. You can only sack him with a 2/3 majority of the House.
We also listen to the cries of the citizens. We also look into what is happening in our various constituencies, villages, and towns. And that is why we also come by way of motion to draw attention of the executive to what is happening in various parts of our country and to urge them to provide solution.
The legislature is a critical institution in making a democratic system function. They have the responsibility of ensuring that the actions and spending of the executive and other agencies of government are in line with constitutional stipulations.
Basically, 3 primary sources of laws. There are 3 basic references. The first is the Constitution, Section 88, 89 of the Constitution as it relates to the National Assembly. The second is what we call, or a law called, the Legislative Houses Powers and Privileges Act. The third, of course, is the standing orders of the Senate and the House of Representatives. In carrying out this oversight, in checkmating the activities of the other organs of government, specifically the executive, the Constitution requires that the intention should be geared towards exposing corruption, inefficiency, or waste. I'm quoting it verbatim: corruption, inefficiency, or waste. Now, that corruption that is to be exposed, that inefficiency, that waste, must specifically relate to a matter within the legislative competence of Parliament, either at the national or at the state level. In other words, Parliament cannot embark on a voyage of discovery in respect of matters that are outside its legislative competence.
This clearly was stated in paragraph 21 of the budget speech by Mr. President.
Legislators conduct check and balance, through which they ensure that programs and policies of government are carried out legally, effectively, and timely for the purpose intended.
We have seen probes, investigation that the National Assembly has carried out. For example, investigation into the power by the contracts by the Obasanjo regime and others. We have seen where the National Assembly investigated the billions of dollars that have been spent to generate darkness. We have also seen cases where Parliament has called investigation into the activities of anti-corruption agencies and several agencies of government, and indeed, some of those investigations yielded results.
How come over the years we've not actually seen any reports, any results from all the numerous oversight functions they have been performing? So what's going on? Is it that at some point people get compromised? And what is it that the government doesn't have the political will? And then again, you must also be sure that the report you are getting from the National Assembly is not skewed to favor some persons and which haunt some persons, because there's so much politics in the system. So if we're going to live by it, we must be sure that those who have not been involved, who are not ready to be compromised, are the ones who perform this oversight. And I tell you, from the revelations we've seen so far, from even the list that was released by the Minister for Niger Delta Affairs, over the years, members of the National Assembly have been involved. So how do they form the committees? How do they set up committees to perform oversight or to probe a system that they have been accused of being part of the sleaze? So that definitely means that whatever report that comes out of it will be biased. So I think that the nation needs to get it right, either by restructuring whatever that needs to be done, and then for us to move ahead. Otherwise, if we continue going the way we are going, we will not make any impact, we will not make any progress.
When the Parliament sits in plenary, takes a motion, resolved, and refer to a committee or other committee, or as the case may be, and the committee or the other committee returns its findings, and the Parliament approves same in the committee of the whole and adopts it at plenary again, and the resolutions are conveyed to the executive. We finished our job. It is now left for the executive to implement our findings. And where they do not do, we also have another committee of the House, Committee on Legislative Compliance. They also follow this to remind the executive that, look, this is our position, this is our decision for implementation. But you cannot, it is left for the executive, and the citizens should also direct their attention to the executive. Yes, they should also be focusing on us. They should criticize us. They should take us up. Wherever we have found one thing, they should take us up. But when the Parliament does its own bit, right, the executive should also do their own bit.
Corrupt practices include the high-handedness by the managing director over inflation of contracts and awards of non-existent contracts, massive contract splitting, and flagrant disregard for the procurement laws in the award of the contracts.
In recent times, the legislators have become increasingly a scrutinizing body so that the executive can deliver responsible and accountable government. This can be through budget requests, where agencies have to defend or justify their activities to the satisfaction of the Congress.
An agency has appeared before the parliament. You've defended this is what you want to do. Okay? Sometimes we suspect inflation. Sometimes we suspect that even the projects that the MDS brings forward might not actually be in place. They may not even be in existence. And so from day one we tackle that. We eliminate those kind of things. But when we approve for you, you still find out that the members, the executive, whom citizens ought to focus, pay attention to, they are not. So when we now get to the point of execution, okay, we also go out to find out, are you doing the right thing that we asked you to do? And the next thing you get is that they try by all means to apply mudslinging, name calling, to block you from wanting to see through what you have approved to them. And that is where spending outside the purview of appropriation occurs.
At some times, the power of subpoena may be used to summon reluctant agencies or public officials.
I'd like to give everyone the protection they deserve, especially those we have invited. Oftentimes, people are invited to the house and they decline to come for fear of being unduly attacked. I plead with us to give these invited guests to the opportunity and the air to bear their mind and give us the right information.
The Constitution in most places gives the legal backing to the oversight function of the legislature.
It's another way of tracing taxpayers' money allocated for capital development, personnel emoluments, and of course, overheads. So once we appropriate and secure Mr. President's assent, the resources are allocated to MDAs. And then it is our duty to track and ensure that the funds that we appropriated are spent according to the law, because the Appropriation Act is a law.
Not only do they hold the executive accountable in their functions, they also have the power to approve and confirm appointments made by the executive and the judiciary. The legislators, through their oversight function, rise up to ensure that funds appropriated for are used judiciously and not diverted. They can also conduct investigation of committees and, where necessary, remove officers they find opposed to democratic performance in their activities.
You see, the parliament is at work. The parliament is doing its own bit. Because if you don't do our bit in the first instance, all these revelations about corruption, you wouldn't see them.
We remember that it was the National Assembly in 2007 or 2008 that discovered that money appropriated in previous years were still in some account, in some ministry and parastatals, over 200 billion naira. And what they were doing is that they were posting them in fixed deposits and making do with the interest. So it was during the function, the exercise of its oversight responsibility that was discovered. And then you see, there's this issue of the legislative arm sounding more like a dog that can bark but cannot bite.
Give me an example of a probe that we have not followed through conclusively. Give me an example, and I will take you to, with my experience in this parliament, I will take you up on every probe that we have handled. It is the executive that has much to do.
Parliament does not have the power to say, okay, we want to carry out oversight in respect of comments made by members of the public against the leadership of the National Assembly. For example, recently we have seen cases where private citizens are being invited in respect of alleged derogatory remarks that they have made against the National Assembly. That does not fall within the oversight responsibilities of Parliament. Parliament also does not have power to carry out criminal investigation although what they do can be described as quasi-criminal in certain instances, but basically their powers are administrative or quasi-judicial. They don't have the power to begin to embark on regular investigation, which is within the purview of the executive. So in checkmating the executive, the powers of the National Assembly or the House of Assembly has been conditionally limited, and there have been cases where the Parliament has said, okay, we want to investigate a matter, and the court said, no, you don't have the power to do that. Indeed, as far back in 1983, in the case of Senate of the National Assembly versus Tony Momo, again in 2003, in the case of Oversight and the House of Representatives, there have been several other cases where the courts, specifically the Court of Appeal, have held that Parliament cannot embark on investigation outside the limits that have been set by the Constitution.
Section 1, A and B of the Nigerian Constitution provides that each House of the National Assembly shall have the power to direct or cause to be directed an investigation into any matter or thing with respect to which it has the power to make laws and the conduct of the affairs of any person, authority, ministry, or government department charged or intended to be charged with the duty of or responsibility for executing or administering laws enacted by the National Assembly. This is so as to expose corruption, inefficiency, or wastage in the execution of public programs.
I wish to humbly appeal to my colleagues to recuse me from presiding over this particular meeting.
The sum of 81.5 billion naira was spent.
I asked you that question. What is the benefit that the National Assembly is benefiting from?
It's okay. So most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly, but you don't know about it.
You said I'm not aware.
The contract is for the chairman's state.
Bring up those names.
I think I must correct myself. If I was misunderstood, I withdraw the statement.
The minister has started contradicting himself.
Will you say it is an oversight that you must have approved the budget without knowing?
Give me an example where members have been indicted.
The NSI, the fuel subsidy program, the way it went, Farouk Lawan and all.
So is the parliament, what happened? Is Farouk not undergoing prosecution?
But we've not, even since then, not...
Excuse me, ma'am. Are we the judiciary? Are we the executive?
Part of what is said is part of the propaganda.